Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. With your ethical Odysseus, just trying to do a test, but actually, with the test, I'll put some documentary, not actually documentary, it's an interview. An interview by one of Telesur. It's called Global Empire, South Sudan on Edge, and it's just going to tell you a little bit about, the question they're asking uh, one of those workers who worked in the United Nations and tried to help South Sudan independence. So there's some things there you can get from it as a hint, and while you're listening to it, um, we'll be back later today. This is just I'm doing a test here because I just got me a new microphone, trying to see how it sounds like. But anyway, welcome guys. For those who are here, tell me if you can hear me clearly, please. All right then, play the music, our favorite music, and then we can start this topic. Thanks.
Geo, you records.
Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 na. Yeah. Banana kala. Na 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 na. Anina wani. Anina sawa. Oh yeah. Anina iko tori. Na sawa. Anina iko tori. Bele dwahid, anena ikotori. Anena ikotori. Oh yeah, kanita minyambio, kanita mintori, weleta minjuba, yeah. Anena ikotori. Keresia sama kesi manena. Yeah. We strong, we stand together. Yeah. Kanina guluwahi, ikotori ya birapa, ya birwa pijama, asan bele na birapa. So give us pen and give us guns. Oh yeah. Give us ipanabule. Oh no, oh yeah. Anina ikotori, nasawa, anina ikotori. Bele dwahid, anina ikotori. Nina ikotori. Oh yeah. Kanita zande, kanita mai, au kukuye. Anina ikotori. Kelene na hibo nefusina. Kebili ya kede maferiganina. Salam wa sahaba, behaja derino, hasan bele na biraba, arif mabisaido. So give us pen and give us guns. Oh yeah. Give us ipanabule. Oh no, oh yeah. Anina ikotori. Nasawa, anina ikotori. Bele dwahid, anena ikotori. Nina ikotori.
Nina kulu sawa jama. So mapel fanangala. I love my people and I'm the voice.
Ajoli ya buga ya baka, kutika balanda bari, kakuwa kilikuku, lambo lukoya. Asante tokosa mundo, nyangara morove mari, mundare, nyambara, otumu kari makotulo, lubara bungaya lobe, lodo dezinari,
Mundo
nare,
anakulu nasi sawa. Maki hata bigesi manena, siasa mabigesi manena, anena wahi.
Well, greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Saturday for those in US and also those who are now going to go into Sunday. I'll say happy early Sunday to you, and those who are already in Sunday, also I'll say happy Sunday to you guys. I hope you hear me clearly. Um, this is just a test because we will have really a topic today, later tonight, US time. But what we're doing is trying to do a test just to see if it's working. And then also we will have a topic. Unfortunately, that topic that I had something happened that I'm not going to be able to discuss it today, but we will be discussing it in the future. And then we're also going to host one of our brother from Ethiopia, who's actually also going to tell us about the Oromo and I forgot the Tigray and Oromo. So we will see. He will tell us more in depth, and then also we will see that we can relate it to what's going on in Equatoria, because our homeland and like Equatorian nationalists, we are very much, determined on our cause and our call for our self-determination. Of course, you see today the political arena. It seems like going wild like a fire, like a forest fire. And there's a reason why, because of the Jing Council elders being appearing in Clubhouse, trying to promote and discuss their own, vision and their perspective of what's Jing Council. And also, they try to deny Miss Carol Berger or the Dr. Carol Berger report, which is consists of I think 70 pages, and we'll try to post it to the people who are interested to read it. But that report, if you look at it in simplicity, it's just a report that, if I could say, just going deeper into explaining the issues of South Sudan, in particular the tribalism that has been created by the SPLM and Council. And there's something here, some people are missing it, and I'm not going to discuss it, but when we read it later, I'm not reading it, but when we highlight some important remarks in that topic, we will begin to actually explain later on why Carol Berger spoke these things, wrote these things, and I could agree that this is a tribal regime, and I'm glad. Like I never was familiar with this report until later last year. I think that's when I heard about this because before it I did not know it was actually out there from 2019 or 18. So people now are making it a big deal, but it's a big deal from the start when you see the regime is controlling, killing, and creating this tribalism within the country. And the one thing about it that I could tell you is that South Sudanese, the regime, when it came to power, it did not really look at the people, and that's why you see a lot of people have lost themselves in there because they just gave the power to the regime, which is the cause of the whole problem, in particular in Equatorial land or our land now the occupation is going on. So you see a lot of these politicians now are coming out, speaking and denouncing and doing whatever they are able to do. Regardless of that, we're not interested on their issues, but we're interested in Equatorial land because our case is more bigger than anything those politicians or those so-called politicians can be able to do. Because Equatoria was, held hostage because of our capital city, Juba. So they made Juba as a capital of the whole nation when they supposed to end that contract of 10 years. It was, I think, it's a verbal contract. It wasn't based on a legal mandate. And this is the thing about it. Juba is supposed to be now free from all these so-called nation capital. It's supposed to be Ramshell, but unfortunately these guys messed up. And I'm going to put a video here where this gentleman, uh, hold on, let me just make sure his name. Um, he's a professor in the United States. He's from Uganda. Those are the Ugandese, what do you call Ugandese from Asian countries like the Indians. I think it's Pakistani. And there's a discussion he talked to his Mr. The journalist or the interviewer for the purpose that they want to understand why South Sudan have failed and what was the reason behind it and was it a good choice that they allowed South Sudan to be a nation. And these things were asked by this gentleman to clarify some questions that the world was asking, a question of are the South Sudanese able to run the country? And as you see, it wasn't South Sudanese, it was just that one tribe that is ruling the whole country. And the worst about it, that the people who worked or with this tribal regime in the past, now they are no longer working with them. They understood that there's a danger coming, but they ignored the danger because they want to look for their own interest, their own career. They care less about the people. Now, when they're now outside, they start thinking, oh yeah, we need to go and oppose this regime. But if you look at it, the oppositions in that side has a lot lacking. But regardless of that, we're not interested in discussing what is their lack. But what we can focus here as Equatorians, that we were put as a scapegoat, or where later these people are beginning to destroy our lands, occupy our territories. And then even if you hear, I'm going to actually put also recordings of this guy, Joshua Dow, who yesterday spoke in Clubhouse. He spoke something very interesting, and it proves what this tribal regime and this tribalistic mindset they are doing, the Jin Council. They were calling Equatorians are like foreigners. Like there is some description he described that Equatorian are invading, because that's exactly what that lady, Dr. Carol Berger, spoke about. That there is somehow that the guys believe that the Equatorian are going to invade from Uganda, Congo, and Central Africa to come to South Sudan. Which, imagine, like, they try to tell us we're foreigners. So I won't go far. Let me just put this video, and I hope you hear me clear, guys. As you can hear me, say yes. That's all I want to know. And then from there, I can put the video on. This video is going to be, what's his name? From the Global Empire. I'll play the video, and I hope it works perfectly. Thank you. If you can hear me, just say yes. That's all I need to know, so I can continue putting the video. The video is just shared from YouTube. You can go to YouTube and you'll find it, but I want to put it here for a record. But this guy is very interesting, and when he spoke blunt, and he was not happy with what's going on in South Sudan. He predicted that the issue is going to be worse. That's this interview. Thank you, Mr. Tito. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, he predicted that the situation is going to be worse in South Sudan. That's before the conflict of 2013 that later uh, led up to more conflicts within territories in this country called South Sudan, but particularly Equatoria, where a lot of now uh, invasion going on as we speak. So let me play this video, and hope you guys can listen.
Good evening and welcome to the world today. This week we discuss the crisis in South Sudan, a crisis which has been building up and which has now reached the proportions of a genocidal struggle between rival factions in South Sudan, which has been in a mess since it became independent in 2011. But we're now at a situation where something has to be done. Things are completely out of control. The killings have increased. The country is in a mess. Oil production came to a rapid end when one faction refused to let the oil wells function, etc., etc. With me is one of the foremost authorities on the region, Mahmoud Mamdani, a professor of government at Columbia University in New York, the director of the Makerere Institute of Social Research in Kampala, and his last book was Saviors and Survivors, Darfur Politics and the War on Terror. Mahmoud, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, was this independence inevitable, or could it have been avoided? I mean, I have read some stuff, actually, I think, including from you and others, which suggests that John Garang, the primary leader of the struggle in the South, was still a very late stage for a unified Sudan with a great deal of regional autonomy. And he was killed, assassinated. What was it that happened? Why the desperation to create a separate state? And why did the West back it so enthusiastically?
Live streaming can be tricky, and sometimes trying to find the right software to make your streams look really professional can be a real chore. The thing I like about StreamYard is that the user interface is really...
Independence was not.
My apologies, guys. I think just trying to see, I'm hearing echoes twice, so this is a problem. Just hold on.
Oil production came to a rapid end when one faction refused to let the oil wells function, etc., etc. With me is one of the foremost authorities on the region, Mahmoud Mamdani, a professor of government at Columbia University in New York, the director of the Makerere Institute of Social Research in Kampala, and his last book was Saviors and Survivors, Darfur Politics and the War on Terror. Mahmoud, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, was this independence inevitable or could it have been avoided? I mean, I have read some stuff, actually, I think, including from you and others, which Good evening and welcome to the world today. This week we discuss the crisis in South Sudan, a crisis which has been building up and which has now reached the proportions of a genocidal struggle between rival factions in South Sudan, which has been in a mess since it became independent in 2011. But we're now at a situation where something has to be done. Things are completely out of control. The killings have increased. The country is in a mess. Oil production came to a rapid end when one faction refused to let the oil wells function, etc., etc. With me is one of the foremost authorities on the region, Mahmoud Mamdani, a professor of government at Columbia University in New York, the director of the Makerere Institute of Social Research in Kampala, and his last book was Saviors and Survivors, Darfur Politics and the War on Terror. Mahmoud, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, was this independence inevitable or could it have been avoided? I mean, I have read some stuff, actually, I think, including from you and others, which suggests that John Garang, the primary leader of the struggle in the South, was still a very late stage for a unified Sudan with a great deal of regional autonomy. And he was killed, assassinated. What was it that happened? Why the desperation to create a separate state? And why did the West back it so enthusiastically?
Independence was not inevitable. If you look at the history of Sudanese nationalism, the first great moment is, of course, the Mahdiya, which is late 19th century, which shook the British Empire. The Mahdi came from central Sudan, but his forces came mainly from Darfur. And there was a very important alliance between these fellows and the Dinka in the south. So the South was present at the very birth of Sudanese nationalism.
Which was the Mahdi's armies against the
Mahdi's
British.
armies, the killing of Gordon,
General Gordon's
General Gordon.
death, yeah.
And then the British come, they colonize. If you look at the first major nationalist organization, it's called the White Flag. It was led by two South Sudanese in the British Army, in the British colonial army. One Dinka, the other Nuer. After that, the British decided on a policy whereby the South would be cut off from the North. You would require permissions to go from the North to the South. Arabic was removed from the South. The Christian churches were parceled out, different districts, one under the Methodists, another one under the Catholics, like that. So these were basically nurtured as two completely different countries. And the Southerners were flushed out of the army. Okay. Then if you look at the development of the SPLA, so every major move.
The SPLA is the Sudanese People's Liberation Army,
Sudanese,
based in the south.
Right, based in the south. So the SPLA organizes basically in the absence of what they think is a fairer deal for the South at independence. Again, the organization of the SPLA is a coming together of leading elements among the Dinka and the Nuer. So every move forward requires a crossing of ethnic lines, right? So there's nothing inevitable about an ethnic civil war. Second thing is that the roots of the civil war are found in the first internal battle inside the SPLA, which is an organization of commanders against John Garang, basically complaining that there are no democratic processes for resolving internal disputes. And Garang is sort of carrying out a solitary show, and he's able to do so because of strong backing from Mengistu Haile Mariam, the Ethiopian state. That's 1991. It results in a massacre
A horrible massacre.
2,000 Dinka, and Machar is involved in that massacre.
Machar is who?
Riek Machar, later to become the vice president and to lead the Nuer militias against the Dinka and Salva Kiir. Machar later apologizes for it, publicly repents, says he was wrong, asks to be forgiven, but that looms large in the public memory, and especially the Dinka memory. And many see what happened 2013 as a payback. Now, why payback? Because nothing happened between 91 and 2013 which held anybody accountable for what happened. The idea was simply, let's forget it. Let's forget it. But when the time came, it was in the front space of public memory. There was nothing inevitable about independence before 9/11. Before 9/11, there were many options. There was even nothing inevitable about independence when Garang became vice president
Of the whole of Sudan.
of the whole of Sudan, because Garang was a major believer in a united Sudan. When Garang returned to Khartoum after the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, there were more than 1 million people in Khartoum to receive Garang. It sent shock waves in the Sudanese ruling circles because most of these 1 million were Arabs from the north. And Arabs in the north are not people who came from outside Sudan. Arabs in the north are Sudanese who became not only Muslims, but who took on the language Arabic. And that's how they became Arabs. As their first language became Arabic, they became Arabs. Let's go back to 9/11. With 9/11, the scene changed. The US had invaded Iraq Afghanistan. Would Sudan be next in the list? This was the big question. If you look at Africa and you look at the countries which seceded after independence, there are only two, Eritrea and South Sudan. In Eritrea, the guerrilla movement won the war. In South Sudan, the guerrilla movement did not win the war.
No.
So why was the solution independence? Because after 9/11, the US, joined by Britain and Norway, known as the Troika, they came in, they addressed the countries in the region, IGAD, 7 countries in IGAD, Interregional Government Authority on Development, a non-political body, but then declared themselves as friends of IGAD, now began to provide military assistance, advice to the SPLA, and put all their influence behind a process that would lead to independence.
So effectively, they encouraged the breakup of the country.
Effectively encouraged, more than encouraged, the breakup of the country.
Actually helped carry
Yeah.
it through.
But also the rulers in the north, in Khartoum, the Islamist party is an important tendency within that party believed that the independence of the south may be better for the north because the south was predominantly non-Muslim, and therefore it would unify the Muslim population in the north. It would create an Islamic country. The entire debate about secularism would be a non-issue because non-Muslims would have left. That didn't happen. So the Machar group goes to Khartoum. When South Sudan begins the negotiations towards independence, 2005, okay, the Machar group returns and rejoins the SPLA in 2002. Meanwhile, the North has created a new army called the South Sudan Defense Forces, which is South Sudanese under Paulino Matip. And that new army is equivalent numbers to the SPLA. And that army returns in 2005. So in 2006, when South Sudan has become autonomous, there's not one army, there are 3 armies. There's the SPLA, there's the Machar group, and there is the
Northern Army.
the not northern, but northern trained army. It's a southern army. So these are put together. You don't have a single army. What you have is a collection of militias. I was there part of the Commission of African Union appointed Commission of Inquiry. So we asked the Minister of Defense, how many people in this army? So 200,000, 40,000 who have been injured, maimed, whatever, police, 240,000. But nobody really knows because there's no central register. Each militia commander has his own roster, and depending on that roster, collects a salary for the soldiers and dispenses the salary, which means that the phenomenon known as ghost soldiers, soldiers who don't exist except in name, on whose behalf money is being collected, would be rampant.
Dead souls.
Ghost.
So, ghosts.
Ghosts. So we don't really know how many soldiers, but we know exactly how many generals.
700.
700 generals, right? 700 generals.
700 generals ruling an army which is supposedly 200,000, but probably much less.
Right. The largest ratio of generals to soldiers of any army in the world.
Ever.
Okay. Now, how do you become a general? To become a general, you form a militia. You form a militia and you fire a few shots. And they say, reconciliation, time for reconciliation. You become part of the National Army you will become a general. You're completely illiterate. You can't read or write. You become a general. Tell us how many soldiers you have. You'll collect money for them. Okay. So that's the process of formation of this national army.
Tell me, before we go any further, is what is happening at the moment? We'll delve into the history a bit later. What is happening now that's got you really worried?
What's happening now is accelerated violence perpetrated by a growing number of militias. If you take December 2013 as the beginning of the violence, in December 2013, you had two major groups, one led by the then president and the other by the then vice president, Kir and Machar. The Kir group based in Bahr el-Ghazal, the Dinka area, and the Machar group based in Upper Nile, which is the area of the Nuer. The third larger area in South Sudan, which is Equatoria, which is around Juba, sort of watching this fighting going on between the two groups. So what's
Both
happened?
of Christian origin.
Christian or traditional animist, but some Muslims also. There is Islam in South Sudan. So what's happened since then and what is happening now is that militia group formation has spread to the third area, Equatoria. And major commanders have withdrawn from the government army and have become heads of these militias.
Okay, returning to the present now, the situation appears to be out of control with sort of violence, common faction fights going on. Oil production still stopped, or have they resumed it? It's still
It is a trickle.
Trickle of oil flowing through. And you referred in one of your recent texts to a genocidal situation.
That was a UN report, Yasmin Suka talking about it. So I was simply citing that report. I mean, I know that there is a rhetorical inflation of language.
Yeah. I mean, genocide is a sort of word, Mahmood, which is used so often that it's becoming debased as a concept. Obviously, there are horrors taking place, but genocide.
She wants to attract attention, so she uses
so you use the word genocide.
Designed to attract attention.
And
I mean, there's a lot of killing of civilian population. Yes.
Okay.
But whether it's a premeditated attempt to eliminate a particular group, I'm not sure.
So the UN Commission report raises the subject to a global level. The Security Council is divided. The Chinese and Russians want power sharing, the others not. But who is the West backing in this faction struggle? Do they have any particular interest in which group wins and why? By West, we mean the United States.
Let me just backtrack a little bit to give us a better hold on the present situation. Okay. When the negotiations begin in 2005, towards what they call a comprehensive peace agreement, the West is in a huge rush to get to independence. So all they are interested in is getting the armed groups together. They rule out of this set of negotiations any group which is politically organized but does not have an armed militia. Right? So effectively, they rule out society. They have no interest in building any institutions which will mediate in a power struggle. None whatsoever. So when the power struggle happens, there are no institutions to mediate between struggling parties or to defend society against the fallout of this. Add to that, the day of independence, and I don't know many other instances, an entire UN army is brought in South Sudan. 10,000. 7,000 soldiers, 3,000 administrators and bureaucrats. 10,000 are brought in under a Norwegian former minister, Hilda Johnson, former Minister of Development, right, known as the Secretary General's Special Representative, effectively the governor of South Sudan. We interviewed her and said, "What was your job?" She said, "State building and nation building." I was astonished. She said without blinking an eye. So you have this army brought in at independence. Why? Because what they're expecting is that there will be an attack from the north. That's what they're expecting. But what happens is not an attack from the north, but the factions begin to fight one another. We have a UN camp right there outside Juba and several other camps around the country. What do? Civilians are running. They open their doors, take in civilians, protect them. Then they close their doors. And there's a massacre going on outside the gate. They do nothing. It's Srebrenica again. It is Rwanda again. What lesson did they learn? So my question was that, okay, you're talking of accountability. Why shouldn't you hold these people accountable? Why should accountability be limited only to those who hold South Sudanese passports? You've introduced a 10,000 force, 7,000 armed, with the best logistics of anybody in the country. Helicopters, because there's a commission, we were flying in their helicopters. I could see their logistics. And they've come for what they call responsibility to protect civilians. And they haven't done a thing to protect the civilians while a massacre is unfolding. Why shouldn't they be held accountable? Right? So there's this double talk. Now the West, does it have a preference in this fighting? Yes and no. It's completely befuddled. It has no clue what to do. It is simply saying, this is tribalism. But it's not tribalism. I mean, power struggles happen everywhere. The problem here is not a power struggle. The problem is the absence of institutions which would contain the after effects and the effects of a power struggle. And why are those institutions absent? Because these guys wanted an independence as quickly as possible. They wanted secession. So the only thing they could think of was an army. That's it. So here is, you don't have a state here. You have the failure of a transition process. It's not a failed state because the state wasn't there. Right? And who is responsible for that failure? The Troika. US, Britain, Norway. These are responsible. They won't accept that responsibility.
Mahmoud, you're suggesting in your article in the New York Times that possibly the only way forward is an African Union basically taking over South Sudan and running it. Now, is this feasible? Because given the divisions within Africa itself, given that one of the United States will find one part, most likely Nigeria, to pick on to do their bidding, how likely is it that this will succeed where others have failed? You know, I look at the botched and disgraceful intervention they made in Haiti with the help of some South American countries. Brazil, Chile got involved in that Haitian campaign. Others stayed out, but the result was a total disaster. What is the guarantee that this won't end in the same way? It will not improve matters.
So we begin with the understanding there is no textbook solution.
No.
Okay.
Because normally you're very hostile to outside
No,
interventions.
I am. So I'll work my way to why I make the suggestion I do. First, there's no textbook solution. Second, the option of not doing anything is a non-option. Because if you don't do anything, this thing will resolve itself. I mean, eventually the war has to have a victor. Okay, and that's the usual way of these things getting resolved. But what we're seeing now is a multiplication in the number of militias. We're not seeing one side, a guerrilla army, becoming dominant, etc. So, what do we do in the meantime? We've had experiences before. Congo is an interesting case because in Congo, something similar to South Sudan, you have the involvement of neighbors, regions.
Fighting each other through proxy armies.
Right, on two sides.
Yeah.
Angola and Zimbabwe here, Uganda and Rwanda here. Okay, fighting. If you go to South Sudan, the Machar group, if you say who is backing it, Sudan is backing it, the north. Ethiopia is backing it somewhat. You take the Kir group, Uganda is backing it. Maybe Kenya, a little bit of backing. So the neighbors, the IGAD countries, neighbors are involved. So that disqualifies them from being part of any forward-looking solution. What happened in Congo was that the troops that came in Kivu province, came in from South Africa and Tanzania. And so this is a positive experience because actually the fighting did stop and they were able to initiate some kind of political process. In the Sudanese case, the African Union put in place a high-level commission on Sudan and South Sudan. It was headed by Thabo Mbeki, former president of South Africa, and had an inner group of sort of intellectuals, practitioners, scholars, all Africans, but based in different parts of the world. And its mandate was to engage with different political forces inside Sudan. It worked in Darfur. That was the focal point at that time. And then South Sudan. So you have a group of people with more or less organic understanding of the region, the actors, the social forces, the strengths, the weaknesses. Now, my suggestion was that the first transition was completely militarized and it failed. South Sudan cannot go back to being part of Sudan as a whole.
You think that's impossible?
It's not impossible. It may be possible, but not now, because Sudan has not played a part. So you can't suddenly take it back. So we need another transition, which is a political transition. A transition which understands that the basis of a movement forward is a recognition of political forces inside the country, and it has to be under the leadership of those who are in tune, whose sensibility is in line with this mode of thinking. And I think if the AU has one group, that is the Thabo Mbeki High-Level Commission, which has the experience and the sensibility, and it's worth trying.
That you're saying it's worth trying?
Yeah, it's worth trying. That's what I say. Anyway, otherwise, I mean, refugees are flooding into Uganda now. Small arms. South Sudan, there is no country in the world with the density of small arms like South Sudan. When a soldier is, under the Norwegian program, demobilization, when a soldier was demobilized, the soldier kept his gun. He got money, he kept his gun, and he went home. When he finished the money,
he used the gun to get
the gun.
Yeah.
I mean, that place, the soldiers do not stay in barracks. Most soldiers live in civilian areas. It is, small arms proliferation is incredible in South Sudan. And now the wider region is beginning to suffer that with proliferation of refugees.
What if this method, which you propose as worth trying, doesn't work? Because they're not going in with their armies.
No, they will have to come in. There is a UN force there, still. Right.
The same?
Yes.
Continuation of the same UN force which went in 20?
Yes, it's still there. It's still there. There have been other forces, soldiers brought in from Ethiopia. The Ugandan army is still there. Right? Uh, it is supposed to leave, but I believe it hasn't yet really left, not yet. It is involved in the formation of militias in Equatoria region. So there would have to be a force which would have to be from African countries, but not in the immediate region. South Africa, Tanzania, Nigeria, whatever. Um, it would have to be under the political leadership of something like the AU High Command, Thabo Mbeki's High Command. It would have to be funded by the West, especially the Troika, because this is acknowledgement of their responsibility. They created this mess. And I believe they would have an interest in funding it just to make sure that the mess doesn't get worse.
But he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Well, that's one, one thing. But, you know, depending on the piper also.
Well, with Trump as the piper, anything is possible as one of the pipers.
Hey, look. I mean, Trump would be a very interesting piper because Trump has thrown overboard the entire notion of human rights interventionism. He's very clear. We intervene for our interests.
Yeah, he's telling the truth.
Yeah, he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
We do not intervene for human rights. Away with that. Right.
Mahmoud, on that note, we must bring this wonderful interview to an end. Many, many thanks for coming in and enlightening us about what is happening in that
Thank you.
part of the world.
Thank you for
Thanks.
inviting me.
Well. This is one of the um, video that I saw, and I think we would love to put analysis on it maybe later tonight concerning. There's some things I kind of agree with the gentleman, but there's some things also I don't agree with him completely. In particular, the genocide, and then also um, talking about tribalism, because this is tribalism going on in South Sudan, and of course, there's many different views from the academic sector, it's particular the Western uh, groups, the academic Western groups, but because mostly they are associated with, you know, the civil society, so-called civil society of South Sudan, who are also tribalized civil society, which we noticed later. They even they put some wrong information, or they were creating misinformation. If you follow back years ago, even this guy Aldo Joe, he wrote a book, and he was brought to DC to discuss his book in, I think it was Roosevelt. I forgot, was it Roosevelt House, something like that. I forgot what the area is in DC. Anyway, I'll try to remember it. I saw the video. I never been there. I never been in his talk, but that was like maybe, if I'm not mistaken, 7 years ago. He was there talking, promoting his book, and they were creating a false notion that Dinka had a lot of history of history making in South Sudan, when in reality they were not, because the history that they made is only during SPLM. Before that, sorry to say, the community were not in the stage or in the arena, political arena, nor in the military arena to make an impact. Mostly, if you look at those people who are part, like Abel Aliari, who was working with the North, those are the guys who actually just were brought by the North to counter what the Equatorians were doing at that time. Because Equatorian nationalists at that time, when they were all for South Sudan, like Joseph Lago and others were else, like Agri Deng, those are the guys who were really out working hard to see South Sudan independent. I mean, there is something this gentleman here did not kind of like understood about the history of South Sudan and Equatoria. And that's why we Equatorians are coming out now, bringing this, uh, you know, uh, those things that is not being spoken and not being said to this to the surface, so people can know the issues that we're facing as Equatorians and what is hindering Equatoria's survival. So with this video, you will look, you can see it again. But later tonight, we'll bring our team, um, you and I, and then hopefully Mr. CJ will be able to, and also you know Ms. Bianco and others, and even Mr. Robert if there is possibility, and others, even James Tongolawi. So we'll bring some people to be in, discuss this. If not, we'll be able to just analyze it. We'll put the video back again, and then we'll kind of interpret what the man have said. Because and the funny thing about this also, if you remember, he's just spoke about um, what I say, this the military. Because this is the funny thing about the military. We have like so many generals, more than anyone in the world. Even China, which with the population of billions, 2 billion, or maybe more now, um, they were, you know, their generals are not that extreme, But in South Sudan, you see 700 generals, and all of them are militia generals, and some of them are not even militia generals. They're just generals by name. They give them a title of general, and they take over, and they say, "I'm a general." And he was talking about the ghost army, which is those people who are getting paid, claiming they're generals, and they have soldiers. So they pay those soldiers, so-called soldiers, salaries, and that's why you see the economic mess in South Sudan was clear, because the regime, um, was doing, misconducts, if I could say, or misbehaving in everything in administrative side. So they were not able to. And as you see, also he mentioned something very important about, um, the government, or the country was given to a military juntas. I mean, it wasn't given to the people. Yes, we were used to vote for a nation. We made that nation become possible. We are the creators of this country called South Sudan as a people, collectively. But what happened is, they betrayed the people. And according to the gentleman, he also uh, put an acknowledgement that Troika is completely responsible for the failure. And this is something we also need to discuss later in analysis on that. Why did he say that? And do we agree with it? And now, of course, at the end, we're going to focus on what's next after all these mess. And what about Equatorians and as us, about us Equatorian nationalists who are calling now for secession? Of course, some people are questioning how can we do it. It's easy. Right now, South Sudan have proven to be a complete failure, and they seem even now. The more the time goes by, the more the truth begins to show up clear. All these years, South Sudanese have been, what you can call it, been in the public eyes as a country of conflict. The South Sudan is a country where it's turmoil and conflict and genocides. And what happened now is that we begin to see clear where the failure is. And for us as Equatorians, we clearly see the failure is in two regions, the Upper Nile and Bahar Gaza. And most of them are the one holding the military power and the political power, and they're the one who are messing up completely in messing the country. So we're definitely going to discuss this later in our topic, and we will see how can we not, and anybody can welcome to join us. I will give an invite. But I was doing this as a test earlier to just check out, um, you know, if this thing works, and it seems it's working. So maybe in like 30 minutes, an hour, like that, we will come back, go live, and then we will try to analyze these things. All right, hold on a second, guys. So yeah, sorry guys. Hold on a second. All right, guys. Sorry about that. That was a phone call. But anyway, right now this is what the topic is. I'm not going to go far, but I'll talk to you later this time. So I appreciate you guys and welcome and good night, good evening, and good morning to you. We will see you later, maybe in 30 minutes or an hour like that. Thank you guys. Bye for now.
Geo E Records.
Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 na. Yeah. Banana kala. Na 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 na. Anina wani. Anina sawa. Oh yeah. Anina iko tori. Na sawa. Anina iko tori. Bele dwahid, anena iko tori. Anena iko tori. Oh yeah, kanita minyambio, kanita mintori, weleta minjuba, yeah. Anena iko tori. Teresia samagesi manena. Yeah. We strong, we stand together. Yeah. Kanina gulu wahi, ikotori ya birapa, ya biru akijama, asan bele na birapa. So give us pen, don't give us guns. Oh yeah. Give us ipanabule. Oh yeah. Anina ikotori, nasawa. Anina ikotori, bele dwahid. Anina ikotori. Anena iko tori. Oh yeah. Kanita zande, kanita mai, au kukuye. Anena iko tori. Kelele na hivyo nefusina, kebili ya kede maferiganina. Salam wa sahaba, behaja derino, hasan bele na biraba, arif ma bisaido. So give us pen, don't give us guns. Oh yeah. Give us ipanabule. Oh yeah. Anina iko tori. Nasawa, anina iko tori. Bele dwahid, anena iko tori. Anena iko tori.
Nina kulu sawa jama. So my pelfanan ngala. I love my people and I'm the voice.
Acholi ya buga ya baka, kodi kabalanda bari, kakuwa kinikuku, lambo lugoya. Asante tokosa mundo, nyangara morove mali, mundare, nyambara, otumo mari makutudo, lubara bungaya lobe, lodo dezinari,
Mundo
nare,
anakulu nasi sawa. Mafi hata bigesi manena, siasa mabigesi manena, anena wahi.
Physical music.
See you later then, guys. Until then, bye for now.